Hey everybody, welcome to the Cyber Monday show. I'm very excited to have you. Today we have an absolute stud in the cybersecurity industry. So excited to jump into this conversation. But first, we're going to check out this video. All right, so with that, I'm going to bring on our guest for the day. Ladies and gentlemen, it is Heath Adams, the Cyber Mentor. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for jumping on. So, of course, everybody probably knows, who you are and what you do by now, but just in case anybody's watching that doesn't know yet, do you mind just kind of running through, TCM, the organization, what you do, your YouTube channel and everything?
Yeah, so my name is Heath Adams. I go by the Cyber Mentor as a handle online. I started as a YouTuber and started doing ethical hacking videos, and that kind of just spiraled into launching a business and launching an academy. And kind of where we're at now is we've kind of got a dual-headed organization. We have cybersecurity consulting side, so we do penetration testing, and all sorts of other facets of consulting. And we've got the academy side, which has our courses related to cybersecurity and certifications as well.
That's awesome. And one of I just kind of want to get after it, off the top is the PNPT, because I think it's something that fascinates me. I think a lot of people are watching that they may not even be familiar with what the PNPT is yet, just because, you're still getting started. But I think everybody should know what the PNPT is. So real quick, do you mind just kind of going through what that is?
Yeah, so it's a exam that is testing students how to perform a network penetration test, and it's kind of from start to finish. So basically, it is designed to be as practical as possible. You have to do some information gathering, go out, find information about the organization, and collect that and utilize that against them in order to perform an external pen test. Pivot into an internal network, perform an internal pen test against an Active Directory environment, and hopefully compromise the domain controller. If you do that, then you also get a chance to submit a report, professional report that our team reviews. Pass that stage, and you have to do a 15-minute debrief with our team. So that way you kind of go through the whole process that you would do if you were actually a penetration tester in the field. You get to start from pen test, the technical side, going into the writing side, and then going into the communications debrief side. So we run you through the whole gauntlet.
That's sick. And I love the application to the real world. I know that that's been kind of a common, I guess, criticism of other existing certifications out there, is that it may seem a little detached from reality in some cases. How has the consulting side of TCM influenced the PNPT and its evolution over time?
Yeah, so that's the one thing about having both sides of the business, is that I'm still pen testing. So I'm not just a trainer, I'm not just a teacher. I'm somebody that's in the field working it and seeing how the field changes and how the attacks change and the defenses change. And we're able to build those sorts of things in and actually perform or tailor our exam to what we're seeing now. And should that change, then we release updates, we change the exam, and we make sure that things stay practical, so that as the field changes, which it's constantly doing, that the exam and the training and everything else changes along with it.
Yeah, that's really awesome. How have organizations and businesses throughout the industry kind of adjusted as the PNPT has, really exploded from what I can see in popularity?
Yeah, our goal was, I think, 1,000 purchases for the entire year, and I think we're already close to that in 6 months. So it's crazy, and we're getting on job postings that I couldn't even imagine. It started locally, some friends, just saying, hey, would you consider adding this? And then now we're seeing it on like Tenable and Ally Bank and some of these huge organizations that are requiring it. And just being able to have meetings, like we just had a meeting with a team last week, and somebody went through the exam. They happened to just be at a gigantic accounting firm, without naming names, and they said that we think we want to switch from big name vendor over to you for all of our training because we're so impressed with what we got. Price point being huge as well, but training and the actual practicality of the application. So it's you make a product and you hope it does well, and the industry seeming to take with it. So I'm excited for it.
That's great. And I mean, of course, I'm super excited to see it kind of blow up like that. Competition can really breed, just excellence, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I know that on your YouTube channel, you posted a video, and I think it might be your most recent video, kind of talking about the PNPT and its official launch. And you kind of dive into why you created the PNPT and your motivations for going in this direction. In case anybody hasn't seen that, what were those reasons, and how has that kind of, I guess, been confirmed as time goes on here?
Yeah, so I like to call the entire training that we do anti-industry. So for me and my background, I came up really poor, and education was not a privilege for me. I took a lot of debt out to get where I was at. I was fortunate enough to have some employers pay for some of the training that I had. No way was I ever paying for some of this stuff out of pocket. And I think with the high salaries and where the industry is going, people just take money for granted a little bit. And, they say, oh, it's $1,000, no big deal. But for some people, it is a big deal. And so my whole process and thought was, well, first of all, I want to create training that's affordable for people. The other side of that is I want to create training that is realistic and things that we would see in the real world. And I went the very standard route of getting experience, getting certifications that employers want, and then getting to the interviews and just getting crushed. Because I didn't know Active Directory, I didn't know open source intelligence, I didn't know the techniques. What's taught to you is, hey, run a vulnerability scan, find vulnerability, exploit vulnerability, and it's not always that cut and dry as much as we wish it is. And even the way that those vulnerabilities are presented are often in a capture the flag format. And the exams that are out there are often in a capture the flag format. And I want something practical. I want something that, if I would have went through this a few years ago, then I would have been so much better off in the training and not having to perform an internal pen test off of blog posts that I can find because there's nothing out there. So just making this practical, affordable training was really, really what motivated me. And, we've kind of gone anti-industry in that route.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that you talk about is providing the training that provides a deep understanding. And I mean, it's super important. I've actually just finished your practical, ethical hacking course. It's so good. I think you really do a great job of diving through all the different concepts. And one of the things that you talk about is updating it and making sure that, new information is ingested in. How has that been kind of a challenge moving forward as you continue the consulting and the certification? And what are some of the things that you look to add in the future?
Sure. Yeah, it's definitely challenging. I try to release a new course or an update every quarter, and that proves challenging itself when you're running a business on the other side of it. For the PEH, yeah, we just went through a major update. We got rid of dependencies on Hack the Box, and we had custom built boxes done by our admins and members of the community giving back, which was great. And we were able to bring in a lot of the issues that we were seeing. And what's unfortunate is, like, when we launched that course, literally within the next week, Kali 2020 came out and changed from root as user into, Kali as user. And it's just all these little things where you run a tool and the syntax changes or something. So you have to kind of stay up to date on these things breaking, and not everything stays perfect. But we do have a suggestions channel. I've got DeWalt, who's a really good, I guess, admin help desk guy that relays the information of what's broken. And we just constantly are doing updates. And when new attacks come out, like Zero Logon or Print Nightmare, we add those into the course and just keeping that relevant and keeping it up to date. But yeah, it's definitely difficult wearing all the hats that I wear. And in terms of new courses, we've got a bunch in the works. I always hate to say that anything's a guarantee until it's on my desk for review. But in the works, in what I think is definitely coming, would be a Python 201 course. We've got a mobile pen test course. We've got a practical malware analysis course. We've got some other content one related to kind of like a Linux for beginners course. And we're going to try to expand to some more of the beginner options. Our brand manager, Zach Hill, is talking about doing a course for kind of like the A plus, like practical A plus material, and just making that free so we can kind of, just incorporate people who are interested in IT and maybe cybersecurity and just bring them under one umbrella. Outside of that, the PNPT was a test run or a trial run to see how industry takes to our certifications and our thought process. Intent is to release more. Intent is to release a web app one. We want to release a wireless one, an advanced network one as well, and start getting into some blue team courses, blue team material. We've got a lot coming. It's just a lot of moving parts, and it takes time. I wish it could all be there tomorrow, but we're getting it all put together. So.
That's all super exciting. And obviously this can kind of bring some challenges and some kind of like institutional industry resistance. Have you seen any of that? And what are some of the risks to everyone's cybersecurity? And this might be kind of a gimme, but what are the risks to cybersecurity as a whole if, career progression is really locked behind a pretty steep paywall?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely concerning. Because this career can be life changing. It could be life altering. If you come from a poor family like I did, and all of a sudden you're making six figures, which is, pretty average for a pen tester, that can be a difference between, eating ramen noodles and actually having a savings account. And that's really like, it's incredible. There's unfortunately a lot of, yes, prices keep increasing. Obviously inflation's there. I understand that. Technology and cost of cloud hosting, I get it, but there's still price points beyond what I think is even like necessary. And it's starting to be, okay, well, we're big name corporation. We're going to charge whatever we want, and businesses are going to pay it, or, somebody's going to pay this price tag because this is who we are. Where, it's a lot of that old school mentality as well, where I went through this certification. So, obviously it's good. I'm where I'm at. So you should go through this certification. And that's not always the case. So, we're starting to see more managers coming through with open minds. And I think that is important to leading a team. I don't want to ever say that the PNPT is the one catch-all for network pen testing. I encourage, like you said, competition. I hope more come out and we have broad diversity, and we have good training. And at the end of the day, we're all in it for the same goal. We're all in it because we're trying to protect, organizations and companies and people from a cyber attack. So the more the merrier, honestly. But yeah, limiting it to one institution or one certain path is definitely concerning, especially if you're priced out of that path.
I think you have a very unique perspective because you have, like you said earlier, so many hats that you're wearing. You have, you're a teacher because you're teaching people things. You're a business leader. You're a pen tester. You've been in the industry here for a minute. How has your, view of the industry evolved over time, especially as you build out the PNPT and look into, creating other certifications? And you also, obviously have the business leader side to it. And you're kind of balancing all of those considerations.
Yeah, we're seeing shifts, and there's positive shifts. Like we're seeing better password policies, especially from 5 years ago. We're seeing multi-factor at more places. We're seeing antivirus. We're seeing intrusion detection. We're seeing companies start to realize, hey, maybe we should probably spend some money on security. And a lot of that has to do with the current events, seeing the ransomware attacks, companies getting, hit for millions of dollars. That helps, and we're just progressing as a society for a lot of these things. But it's always a cat and mouse game too. Anything where we create a patch, somebody's going to figure a way out to break it. I don't think anything is unhackable. So you just gotta kind of stay on top of that. I'm seeing the industry move towards the web quite a bit. Web apps are probably our number one selling product from a consulting side. Cloud is huge. If you're trying to get into the industry now and you want to differentiate yourself from other people, go get an AWS certification or learn Azure, or sprinkle something in there with your shiny certification on the pen test side, and really that could benefit you for years to come, because organizations are moving off-prem, going to the cloud, and utilizing those resources as well. So, and I can expect that trend to continue.
Gotcha. And speaking of, just kind of evolution or evolutionary perspectives here, as you have continued on as the, a business leader and instructing, how have, your approaches as a pen tester evolved over time?
Yeah, it's hard to stay on top of things when you're doing so much, but I'd say they're always evolving. It helps to be, especially for me, it helps to be in groups, like a community, or have something where you can talk to people who are in the field. I pretty much have lunch, I would say, at least twice a month with somebody who is a business owner of a very similar pen test company. I have people that we have like Charlotte groups for meetups where we're local. And this all gives you time to, even if you're not taking the latest and the greatest cybersecurity courses, or you're not necessarily keeping up to date with what's on Twitter, it's a great time to meet with people and say, hey, have you heard about this attack? Or go see a talk about, upcoming things that are going on and say, oh yeah, I want to go play with that in my lab. There's a bunch of like remote potato, petit patam, like all these little, new attacks that are coming out. And it's hard to stay out on top of everything that's going on all at once. But, being involved in the community and just like planting as many little seeds as you can definitely helps. And just being, I guess, in communication with other people absolutely helps as well.
What's some advice that you would give to like a small business leader or someone that works in a smaller business that may not be able to, I guess, focus on cybersecurity full time? Like, what's some advice that you would have for them to be able to maintain security without obviously just throwing the entire business, out the window trying to secure it?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of basics that you can do to make yourself secure. Multi-factor, all the things, I think is super important. A strong password policy and enforcing that password policy, having having password deny lists, basically where password, for example, isn't in the word, or dictionary words aren't in the word. So when you say 12 characters, you mean 12 characters, but they're jumbled, they're misspelled, or something along those lines. But enforcing those policies, enforcing multi-factor, training your users, that goes such a long way, especially in a small organization. Your attack surface is, I'd say honestly, smaller organizations are a lot harder to attack just because the attack surface is small. I'd rather have a 100-person organization or 1,000-person organization, because the chances of summer 2021, whatever, are going to be there way more likely than somebody at like a 10-person or a 5-person organization. Sure, it might be there, but it's a lot less likely. So having that and just training your users and just having some good policies in place, and having the basics like antivirus, and making sure if you're using BYOD that you're limiting those devices on certain networks, or segmenting, and you have user controls in place, and just like all the little basic things that don't cost an arm and a leg to do, and can be done by, I would say, most small business owners.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think that's all great advice. And I mean, password managers, I'm seeing, people talking about password managers down in the comments. I would ask your favorite password manager, but for OPSEC purposes, I'm not going to do that. Please don't answer.
You got
it. I just lost my question thinking about password managers there. It is interesting that you say that a larger organization is easier, I guess, to attack than a smaller one, and it makes complete sense. What's some advice, I guess, that you would have for like a security team that might be working in a larger organization that might be having, especially, you mentioned like a 100-person company, for example. Just thinking with, anecdotal data, of course, from friends that I've talked to, it might be like a 1, 2, or 3-person IT staff. And that's not even to say that they have any cybersecurity people. They're kind of wearing multiple hats themselves. What are some ways that they can kind of keep up and security isn't compromised in that kind of an organization?
Yeah, that's a lot of what we're seeing, especially in like the small to mid-sized businesses, is you see maybe 1, 2, 3 people working in an organization in the IT department. And yeah, maybe they don't have cybersecurity training. So it's imperative, again, to implement some of these just basic policies. And a lot of the pushback that we hear is, well, the employees don't like it. Or I remember one time we were on an engagement, and getting them to move from a 6-character password policy to an 8-character password policy was pulling teeth. And eventually we got there, but it was just like, well, the users aren't going to be happy. And it's like, well, the users aren't going to be happy if the company gets hacked and they don't have a job either. So it's one of those things like, being able to push back and being able to implement these policies and having a strategy on how you're going to roll these things out. Again, you can make my life really hard by keeping these patched, keeping your password policy strong, keeping multi-factor in place, and just training your users for what seems wrong or what seems suspicious, training them to submit phishing emails and identify phishing and running campaigns, which all this you can do internally. All this you can do pretty cheap, low cost, and really secure your environment from a small business standpoint.
I think phishing is such an interesting kind of rabbit hole to dive into. I don't know, at least that I've seen, it's talked about nearly as much as maybe it should be, because it can be an easy thing to catch, but at other times it can be a harder thing to catch. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? And what are some ways that, pen testers have been able to manage, an effective phishing campaign?
Yeah, it depends on the situation, depends on the goals as well. If you're doing mass campaigns, making it look as realistic as possible. A lot of times we're getting these phishing trainings, and they're like, well, identify this fish, and it's got like misspellings and just like blatantly obvious things. But what if the email looks literally like it's coming from the same domain? Because now you can buy a domain where maybe an I or an O or something is like the same character to your the naked eye. What do you do in that situation? You say, oh, I verified this is so-and-so from this address, and this looks like an email that I would get sent. How do you identify these things? So it really becomes like getting into that kind of security training and not just saying, well, here it is as a basic level. Because if somebody wants to phish you and they're going to do a good job at it, they're not going to hit you with one of those, those bad emails. They're going to do their research. They might even really do their research. Maybe they find out you like phishing, you shop at this particular shop, it just depends on how deep they want to go. But from a security standpoint, running those kinds of campaigns against your users and really being able to educate them and really train them on some of the more in-depth gotchas, I think is important as well.
Are there any like free or very accessible resources that are available for the end user, and maybe like, again, smaller organizations that can't necessarily afford to dish out large amounts of money for this kind of thing? What are some resources that they can use to educate users on phishing?
Yeah, so from an employer standpoint, we do have the phishing course at the academy. You can do a lot of this with reading blog posts and stuff as well, but like setting up Go Fish on an AWS server is something that you can do fairly cheap. Cost of running AWS and just setting up those campaigns and running those campaigns and getting the users to click, submit different things, and then, pulling those users maybe into additional training if you need it, and say like, here's what you were doing, here's what went wrong. And I think, kind of having those people be your advocates. Like a lot of the time when people will submit a bad password or click on a link, I see like IT teams thinking like, oh man, this person's in trouble, or even the end user thinking, oh man, I'm in trouble. And it shouldn't be. Because that person's going to be the person that remembers, not always, most of the time, that remembers, hey, I got phished. They're going to be much more aware, much more cautious. They're going to be an advocate. They're going to submit links. And it might take a few goes through that to really, enforce those ideas. But running these quarterly, just doing smart training along those lines, it can be done pretty cheap and effective as well.
Yeah, and I like your point about kind of creating advocates throughout the organization. I feel like that's so important, right? What are some effective strategies that you've seen? Beyond just, creating phishing campaigns and educating users to create those advocacy programs, and how effective has that been in really taking the overall user base to the next level?
Yeah, I think it's just education and positive reinforcement is really what it is. Saying, hey, it's, this is why we're doing this. This isn't, you're not in trouble, not shaming somebody. Don't go and say, oh, so-and-so click this link, shame, shame, shame. It's more, hey, you did this, but here's why it happened. And here's how we can fix this. And that's how you build advocates. You build them through positive reinforcement and saying, here's how we can learn for next time. And yeah, they in turn hopefully go and are the ones who can spot the fish or educate other people, and it becomes more of a almost trickle down kind of effect when you have those planted all without and throughout the organization.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's, the phrase, human firewall is kind of thrown around a lot. I've seen a lot of people kind of say that users can be the weakest link, and that certainly can be true. How effective can an organization's cybersecurity be if the user base is like really on it? They can recognize phishes. They know the points of contact to get in touch with if something's going wrong. Can that really make up for, let's say, like a lack of the shiny new tools, or is that kind of an overblown statement?
Yeah, absolutely. The majority of attacks, especially ransomware related, are social engineering. So it's some form of social engineering involved. So it's not likely that you're going to see, outside of the big 0 days that come across, there's unlikely that when you're doing something like an external engagement, you're going to come across remote code execution. It's just highly unlikely, especially as a pen tester, but even as a hacker, like there's bots scanning the internet all the time. Most organizations are running vulnerability scans, doing some of the basics. So really it comes down to, if I got my proper items in place, getting the users educated, and having educated user base will make life very, very difficult. I mean, it just is what it is. If you're calling somebody and they're saying, "Hey, this is suspicious, I'm going to alert," so whoever, that could mean the gig's up. I mean, so you got to be really on point with that. So I mean, that's the perfect world is having an entire educated user base on top of good security protocols. And yeah, absolutely, I think that could replace having the shiny new objects that are there, especially. So
yeah, I kind of want to switch gears just a little bit. You talk about having multiple hats, and that obviously can be a lot, right? So how important is time management, not only to accomplish everything, and really for other, InfoSec professionals, people that are new coming into the industry, or people that are obviously working full time, they're balancing school, and they may be balancing trying to learn this stuff on their own. How important is time management to get all that accomplished?
Yeah, it's super important, depending on, where you're at in your career. And I still struggle with it, even from I guess, a business owner standpoint. There's things we do, especially like if you're talking from a business owner standpoint, delegation is one of the hardest things that I've had to do and learn to do. I had conversation with Dave Kennedy about it. Like, hey, how long did it take you to be comfortable giving your baby to somebody else and saying, here you go, go work on this so you can focus on other stuff? We utilize project management tools to be able to have task boards and see all the things that are going on, because especially as you get more employees and they're doing all different sorts of things, you can I can go and click and say, okay, what's going on in the pen test world? What's going on in the marketing or sales world? And see what different people are working on in kind of like a high level overview. And that's kind of like what I need at that point. Having team meetings to manage those sorts of things as well, to keep track of those sorts of stuff. But from a student standpoint, or you're trying to break into industry, yes, prioritization is incredibly important. You have to look at opportunity costs and the things that are most important to you in your decision. Like, am I going to go to school, or am I going to study for the certification? Am I going to devote my time here, or how does it work? And everybody's different. I can't necessarily give advice other than you need to sit down and do pros and cons of what is going to work best for you. I've literally done this in my life with switching careers and everything else, looking at, well, here's how much salary I'm going to lose if I go to school for 2 more years to go study something. And, that salary, how long is it going to take to make back up with this new career field, and those sorts of things. So it comes down to training as well. My advice is to chase what you're passionate about, because it's a lot easier to study. So if for example, if you're debating between network pen testing and web app pen testing, and you find network fascinating and web app boring, study network. Don't force yourself into a topic that you don't want to study right now, even if it's it's mandatory. Get some momentum, study that topic, move on to the next one, and it feels like it feels a lot easier doing that. And just learning to manage your time, task boards, Excel sheets, little post-it notes, whatever it does, whatever works for you. I've used all of them just to kind of have reminders and goals and things that you need to take care of. So
yeah, that's all super important. I feel like delegation is one of those things that you talked about very early that is so important, but yeah, I totally get that it's very, very difficult. You've mentioned before, both in your course and in other mediums, that you're a veteran, and one of the things that they hit hard in the military is leadership. At all levels, everyone really can be a leader, and delegation being a very important piece of that. How was your time in the military, influence, or how did it influence, your leadership to be a business leader, to be a pen tester, to be an instructor, to be all these things?
Yeah, I think it helped. So I was enlisted first, and I got to see that side of things, and then I became an officer, which is more of a leadership position. And I took the things that I learned from being on the enlisted side that I didn't like that my leadership did, and said, vowed to change those things. Like, and for me, leading by example is super important. And I think I took that out from the military, especially. It's one thing to say, hey, go do this, but it's another thing to say, hey, go sweep the floors, go mop the floors. I'm going to be the guy grabbing the mop too. I'm going to be sitting there. I can't do it every time, but if I've got the free time, I'm not going to just lean around and watch people clean. I'm going to sit there and help you clean. And you lead by example. If you want something done, you have to show that you're capable of doing it too. For my management style, especially, that has translated and moved over into, from the TCM side. Hopefully my employees will tell you, but I'm very laid back. I am not a micromanager. As long as you're getting the work done, I don't care when you're doing it or how you're getting it done, as long as it's effective, efficient, and we're getting the results that we want to see. So I think there's multiple ways you can manage people, but my whole goal is to, have people from a mental health focus first, and just make sure that my employees are happy, and we could do as much there. And I think that at least for me, having the laid back, personality works out really well.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you kind of mentioned mental health there, because that's, obviously a very important conversation in cybersecurity that, I know of a lot of people that I interact with here on YouTube and Twitter that talk about mental health a lot. I'm not quite sure how often it's talked about in other circles. But burnout can be a real thing. And I know that you've talked about it on your channel. I've talked about it a little bit on mine. What are some ways to kind of work through that? I know you've talked about, focusing on things that you're passionate about, and that can really kind of help that. But even then, you can only be going 110% for so long.
Taking breaks is important. And that could mean so many different things. That could mean taking, hey, I'm studying, I'm burnt out for the day. I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to go play a video game for an hour, or whatever it might be, whatever helps you decompress. That can be super helpful. Reset your mind, go back, study again. But maybe you've been studying for 3 months for a certification straightforward. Hopping right into the next certification study is, you might have that momentum there, but at the same time, you could easily burn out on that. Like being able to step away and say, hey, I need a week, or I need a month. There's times where I will literally take breaks. And I think a good example of that is course creation. Like I pretty much kill myself when I make a course. Like I don't record during the day. So I do my hours during the day when I'm working. And then at night, I'll record. So I'll be recording from maybe 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Might stay up and just go straight through work, sleep, go back through the process. And it's one of those things where that kills me. That drains every bit of energy that I have to manage that. So I take time off. That's where it's, hey, I'm only going to do one of these a quarter. I'm not going to be able to release one every single month. That's not my, I can't. So you have to be able to figure out what your cadence is, what works best for you. And depending on how long you've been going at something and, the break that you need, just understanding that taking breaks is okay. And it's absolutely encouraged. I love to take breaks midday. If I'm on a pen test and I'm stumped, I'll go play Overwatch for 30 minutes to an hour, come back, have a fresh mind, and maybe I think about something a different way, or and come up with creative ideas that I wasn't going to have because my brain was burnt out. So I just think from any aspect, breaks are important.
Yeah, I can't agree anymore. That's great. Here, real quick, before we got about 10 minutes here before. I want to make sure that people can ask some questions if you're all right with that.
Yep.
So everybody in the chat, if you have any questions, just pop them in the chat. We will talk about it if we haven't already. We've already covered quite a bit. I've seen a few questions, so I just want to make sure that I add that caveat. And then the second thing that I want to make sure that I hit up on is it is currently Hispanic Heritage Month, and my friend Eric Bellardo and his organization Raíces is doing quite a bit for that. So, and getting people into InfoSec. So some awesome stuff going on there. You can see the Twitter handles down below, and he has a YouTube channel as well. So there's some just awesome stuff going on. But with that, I will let this kind of sit here and see if anybody has any questions coming in. Yeah, burnout's good, breaks are good, or burnout sucks, breaks are good, right?
Yeah.
How have you seen, just like any cases where people are going really, really intense with pen tests, they fail to, take breaks, they burn out, or that can lead to some serious issues for an organization cybersecurity? Basically, to really tie it into the big picture, how much of an impact can burnout have on an organization cybersecurity?
Sure. You could look at it from either side. So burnout on the defensive side, maybe you miss something. As simple as that. Maybe you miss something. Maybe you, who knows with Facebook, right? Maybe you set a configuration wrong. It's just it's things like that where a simple mistake could lead to millions of dollars in expenses. And same thing for the offensive security side. If you're running a pen test and you're not 100%, if you miss a bug, miss something that you should have found or otherwise would have found, what does that spell for your client? What does it spell for your company? So it goes both ways. Burnout can absolutely cause some significant damage, and ensuring that your employees are taken care of and they have the ability to take care of their mental health, I think, is important. And there's a lot of things that you can do to focus on that. But unfortunately, a lot of organizations don't put that as a priority.
Yeah, and I wanted to touch up on that real quick. Is, over time, have you seen organizations really make mental health and preventing burnout and those kinds of things a priority? And how can we, as an organization or as an industry, really get better at that area?
Yeah, so I can tell you that, yes, it's becoming more of a focus and more people are talking about it, which is good. Some of the things that we do for TCM Security is we have 32-hour work weeks. Some weeks that does push into 40, but we try our hardest to keep it 32. We do unlimited PTO, not like, hey, you're never going to see the PTO. It's encouraged. And our goal bench time is 25%. So I've worked at companies where, hey, your goal billable hours are 100%. Like, make us money. If you're not making us money, you're not doing it right. Where for us, if you're making money 75% of the time, great. 25% of the time, do whatever you want. Go study. Go write a tool. Go to a conference. Whatever it might be that excites you and keeps you passionate and helps you learn too. If you're going 100% of the time, when do you have time to learn the new techniques and stuff, unless you're putting in hours outside of work? So, and just being flexible, being approachable, I think helps as well. And just making sure that your employees are taken care of. So hopefully more organizations move to that mindset and that thought process.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's good that organizations are kind of moving in that direction. So hopefully that trend continues here. We have a question here that I think is a pretty good one. Is job hopping in cybersecurity frowned upon? And I feel like job hopping, we could talk about that a little bit on defining what is a good amount of time to stay in a position before bouncing as well.
Sure. So I don't think that there's any defined amount of time that you need to stay in a position. And I say this to my employees too. Honestly, when you come to the point that you feel like you're not growing or you're not learning anymore, it's time to move on. And you may hit that. Like, time is such a weird thing. People are like, you have to spend 2 years as a network engineer before you move on to this next thing. And that's not true. You might study harder, you might learn faster, you might just get it. It might be a topic that you understand. And to say we have to have definitive timelines on things is just wrong. So in terms of job hopping, there is statistical proof out there. There's actually a Forbes article out there that says people who stay at their jobs longer than 2 years actually lose money. I forget what the percentage is, but it's like it's an insane amount. In IT especially, that's true. So being able to go from a job, maybe getting some experience, making whatever you do, and if you can go get a $20,000, $30,000 pay raise, go do it. And I've said, like I said, the same thing to my employees. Like, I'll be the first advocate for you. If you go get a huge raise, like, I'm going to be the one, like, yeah, I want to keep you. I want to train you. That's like my thing. But if you can go get it, go get it. Like, there's no hard feelings. So I think that, like, job hopping from a, hey, I've learned all that I can learn, or, hey, I'm not making enough to survive, or whatever the combination of the two might be, or, hey, I hate my job, and that's fine too. But I encourage it. I don't think there's a minimum time. I just think you'll know when you're ready.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that definitely ties into the mental health question on just, I mean, like you said, if you hate your job, why stay? That's a sucky place to be, right?
Yep, exactly.
I know that no one's actually like posed this as a question, but specifically imposter syndrome. I know some people are kind of talking about it in the chat. I know I've had my struggles with it. What are some ways that people can kind of work through that and really just kind of get out of that funk?
Yeah. So I don't think it ever goes away, but I don't think it's a bad thing either. So what I like to tell people when they ask about imposter syndrome is that comparison is the thief of joy. And that's a phrase that has stuck with me for a long time now. And if you're busy comparing yourself to others, which I think is where imposter syndrome really comes from a lot of the time, then you're going to just be unhappy. Social media is great at upvoting and putting likes and all the success stories to the top, the biggest bug bounties, the coolest success stories that are out there, but we really don't see all the failures that took place to get to those points. And really, at the end of the day, like we were talking about just a second ago, if you learn something faster than other people, great. If you learn it slower than other people, great. And comparing it to like a race, like if you run a mile in 6 minutes and somebody runs it in 10 minutes, you both ran the same mile. It's not a competition. It's really about focusing on yourself. So when it comes down to it, make sure you're running your own race, study at your pace. Don't worry about what other people are doing. And if you're getting interviews, you're getting into jobs, you've made it into the field, you're there for a reason. It's okay to not know everything. It's okay to be the dumbest person in the room, especially at your job. If you're new to the field, you're supposed to be soaking up that information. The expectation is not that you're going to know everything. So just make sure you're caring about yourself and what you're capable of, and just try to improve every single day, really.
Yeah, that's so good. There's a quote that always sticks in my head. Don't compare your beginning to somebody else's middle. And I know
Yes.
I catch myself doing that so often, so often. So yeah, I just agree with everything that you said. Someone asked a question on the PNPT, and I think everybody kind of answered it in the chat, but it kind of got me thinking, is there, for anybody watching this video, is there any like point in their career that they should start looking at the PNPT, or is there a time that they should wait to take the PNPT, or is it really just kind of whenever you're ready?
Yeah, so I like to say that you should have a foundational skill set there before you look at it. Typically, it's like a help desk type skill set. Like, can you build a computer? Can you tell me about basic protocols? Like, what's DNS? Like those little things. Do you know what a subnet is? Do you know basic subnetting? Do you know basic computer networking, the OSI model? That's the foundation you really need to build before you say, hey, I want to get into hacking. If you start building a foundation or building a house upon a weak foundation, it could collapse. And it's the same kind of concept here. So making sure that you have the general IT knowledge down is important. The PNPT and the courses are geared to take you from, hey, I know a little bit around this area, to, hey, I'm ready to take this exam. There's no surprises. There's nothing in the the coursework or the exam that wasn't, or there's nothing in the exam that wasn't in the coursework. So it's one of those things that it's geared towards juniors, geared towards maybe even mid-tiers. We've had seniors take it, especially those looking to, like we talked about earlier, looking to see, hey, is this a good fit for my team? I need to make sure that I go take this and see, hey, this is the real deal. I'm going to recommend it for our entire organization. So it's really geared towards the mid to junior level, but we've seen plenty of senior levels come through as well. So yeah, so a little bit of everybody, but definitely making that foundational or building that foundation first is important before just starting to build a house.
Gotcha. Yeah, and kind of more towards that foundation. Like, what? I'm going to use kind of like a certification here, just like to kind of allude to like generally the concepts covered in it. Not necessarily you have to have the certification, but you have to have that understanding. Would you say like the Security Plus is like that place, like you get that, or you have that understanding before the PNPT, or is there like another kind of baseline of information before that?
Security Plus is good. It's just kind of like it's generic, broad security concepts. I think it's great. And yeah, you don't have to go out and get these certifications. I think they help. I went and did them. I don't see a downside to them. I think they're relatively affordable, especially with the resources that are out there. You can get a book for the A+ for $30, or you can go buy a course for $10. You can even watch like Professor Messer for free. So depending on what clicks with you and what teaching style works for you, most of these certifications are $200-300, I think, and maybe even discounted for students and such. So much more affordable compared to some of the other things out there. And I think they do look good on a job resume as well, or at least from a junior perspective. So I think, yeah, Security Plus is kind of that baseline kind of knowledge. It's really, in my opinion, the network plus. So once you get the network information down, you kind of understand your ports and protocols. You just layer some security information on top of that, start thinking from a more security perspective and encryption and some of the basic terms that you're going to see thrown around. I think it all helps. So yeah, layering that in with going in and trying to get into hacking, which I think a lot of people see it as like an avenue into IT, and it can be your first job. I've seen people do it, but it is more of a mid to advanced job. It's not like typically a first IT job. So definitely building out those missing pieces, I think, would be important before just jumping right into it.
Gotcha. One of the things that, I mean, definitely for the PEH course that is very helpful to have is a home lab. And if a lot of people watching may have, the hardware to be able to build that, but a lot of people, kind of like you talked about, may not have the resources to be able to make that happen. Are there any plans, or is there already like a lab that's hosted by TCM to be able to practice some of the concepts in the PEH that, are kind of geared towards some of the attack vectors that maybe they'll see in the test?
Yes, though, let me start off by saying that the idea is there. We've been talking about it for probably 2 years. The idea is not cheap to implement. Either we go through a vendor, and this is full transparency, either we go through a vendor and they take what I would consider significant cut of revenue, or we build out the model ourselves, and we're looking at least $100,000 plus investment just to be able to have a digestible UI with the ability to have cloud interface. So it's a feature we're working on. I've made in the past 2 months offers to buy 2 different companies that do this. We want to do it. It's just the time commitment and the investment commitment, and figuring out the pricing structure too, because we won't be able to just offer it for free. How all that's going to work out. So in the long term, that's going to be something where everything's under one hood. It's going to take time to get there. So it's definitely in the works.
Gotcha. Yeah. I mean, that definitely makes sense that might take a second. So, but that is exciting.
Yeah.
That's kind of, at least in the headlights, I guess you could say.
Yes, absolutely.
So we're coming up here towards the end, everybody. So if you have any last minute questions, just throw them in the chat real quick, Heath. So talking about taking a break, I know you mentioned Overwatch. Are there any other? I think I saw that you're a Cowboys fan. Is that true?
Yes, I'm a Cowboys fan.
Okay. I'm a Chiefs fan. So Chiefs play Cowboys this year. So that'll be good. But other things like, what are ways that you like to kind of just decompress and relax?
Yeah, I'll touch on that too. I think it's one of the two. I think the Cowboys used to be in Kansas City, or I think they used to be right. Is that correct?
The Chiefs were once the Dallas Texans, and then they moved
Okay,
to Kansas City in 1960 something.
I knew
Yeah.
there were ties there. So I've always been kind of like a secret Chiefs fan, especially in the last, I'd say last decade or so. I always, I love-hate relationship with Andy Reid just because of the Philadelphia Eagles, but they've been my secondary team for a while, and before that was St. Louis Rams, especially back in the day with Kurt Warner, Marshall Faulk. I always had a secondary kind of like, fan to root for, just like basketball and everything else. Yeah, for me, like I like unwinding with sports, especially basketball. It's kind of like my go-to thing. Cars, just going out for a drive is really relaxing for me, and being able to just get out of the house, clear your mind, put on an audiobook, or not even just like just drive around and kind of space out a little bit. TV, I veg out sometimes. We just finished Black Sails not that long ago. We did, Deadwood before that. So we've been kind of on this HBO kick, and I guess Stars kick. So a little bit of everything, but it hasn't been much in the video game scene outside of Overwatch for a minute for me. I used to play a lot of Rocket League too, but it was never really good at Rocket League.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I do love to drive around too, so I feel that. I went to school up in New York City, so there was a brief moment I couldn't drive around.
Sure.
And it was soul sucking. It was brutal. But yeah, that's awesome. That's so cool. I'm not seeing anybody, with any questions down the chat, so we're gonna go ahead and actually wait. We got one. No COD or FIFA. Doesn't sound like it.
No FIFA. Call of Duty, yes, occasionally. I've played pretty much every single one of them. I just burn out real quick on them. Overwatch has been pretty consistent for me. So I like first person shooters. Halo was like my everything in college, especially. So it's just kind of been where I usually like get a game and I'll stick with that one. And it's been until Overwatch is dethroned. That's kind of what it is right now.
I love it. It's on top, right? It's on top.
Yes.
So with that, we're going to go ahead and close this up. So actually, hang on. Got one more, and then we'll go ahead and call it. I want to make sure I get these questions before we bounce. Any discounts for the month of October?
So we run discounts probably 2 or 3 times a month. Just make sure you're either in Discord or following on some sort of social media, either LinkedIn or YouTube or Twitter. We post them all the time. Outside of that, the PNPT doesn't really get discounted very often. It's one of those things where we do offer discounts for students. So if you've got like a student email or ID, or your current former military or frontline worker, any of those sorts of things, we've got discounts for teachers as well. So just check our FAQ page out for those. But if you're looking for just courses, just honestly stay patient. We throw discount codes out all the time.
Gotcha. So that's awesome. So with that, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. So Heath, I really appreciate you jumping on. This has been just absolutely awesome.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
All right. So with that, everybody, thank you for jumping on. I really appreciate it. Make sure to hit that subscribe button if you're interested in more, and like if this was helpful for you. And with that, we will see you all next time.